So, good afternoon to everybody. At the outset, I would like to introduce myself as Chandrika Venkatesh, Executive Director, CLEFMO of India. And on behalf of CLEFMO of India, I would like to welcome all to the webinar on current soybean outlook and future opportunities. Now, I request our chairman, Mr. Neeraj Kumar Srivatsava, to give the welcome address. Over to you, sir.
So, thanks, Chandrika. On behalf of CLAFMA, I would like to welcome each one of you in today's webinar. I think we all are aware of the current situation of the soybean meal, for especially to be used in our poultry industry and some part of dairy and aqua. So last year we suffered a lot with the unexpected price speculations and the meals availability for our industry. Prices has gone up to 100 rupees beyond, and we all as industry whole suffered a lot because of this speculation. The expectation was that after new crop, we will get the right prices of the soybean, and the availability also will improve for the industry users. But for a very short time, we had tested this positive things, and again the prices started going up, and today it has crossed more than 70 rupees to 75 rupees between normal and the high pro soybean meal. This is a very sensitive matter for industry. At the same time, we strongly feel that we should have some right alternate and the control on the soybean prices to be used for our industry, not only to making it sustainable and survival, but even to make it even profitable. So I think most of the industry associations are working on that. They have again waken up. We are making our own representation to the government and the policy makers. They are also finding it difficult. There is a lot of political issues is coming in between, looking into the farmers' interest, preferences, and you know that in a democratic country, this is not things are not that easy to take it forward and get the right decision in the favor of any one industry association. However, we are working very closely on that. But at the same time, the objective of this webinar was that how to educate most of the people and the members of the CLAFMA who are there and who are using the soybean meal, that what is the current situation, what we are doing it, and why this situation has arises, and what could be the future options, and how we can see that the coming years, okay, some few months and the coming years for soybean meal to our industry. For that, we have invited two very eminent speakers who are masters in the knowledge of their subject, I can say that. So I would like to just introduce both of them in a very brief. So the very first person is Dr. Vibha Ahuja. So Dr. Vibha Ahuja is Chief General Manager of Biotech Consortium India Limited. She is based in the New Delhi. She has done her PhD in microbiology and served as I said, Chief General Manager of Biotech Consortium India Limited. She is an expert on biosafety and regulatory aspects, particularly with reference to genetically modified organisms. Having more than 25 years of experience in the field, she is very well versed in issues related to the Indian biosafety regulatory framework and has been involved in the formulation and dissemination of guidelines. She has led the preparation of biosafety documents and communications outreach activities to stakeholders. Throughout her long and distinguished career, she has been actively involved in capacity building initiatives in India and throughout South Asia. Friends, let me tell you that she has been instrumental and very supportive during our last all the follow-up of import of soybean meal through the government policies and the policy makers and the authorities. She has been supporting us technically by validating and the even up to the I mean to say that the court of Indian law, where we have been challenged that why genetically modified organisms should be imported. So she has been very, very supportive on that. So she is going to talk on the myth on the soybean meal, especially on the GM and all, and how we can, how the future is going to look like, and what as an industry, as a consumer, we should do that, and what should be our thought process on that. Our second speaker is Ms. Prerna Desai. I think most of us has heard her in our CLAFMA AGM. She is having the updated and the most latest knowledge on the currently what is happening the soybean meal, from the seeds to the meal and the other. It's not only soybean meal but all the grains actually. So she is there with us today, and she is going to take up all the questions, possible questions about the soybean meal, about current situation, how the forecast and the future looks like in the coming 2-3 months. Okay, what are the reasons for this price speculation? So I mean to say that I'm personally having a lot of ambiguity and curiosity to ask all these questions, and I'm sure the same is going to be with you guys also. So we are going to have it very interactive session. I'm not going to make it very, very presentation mode part and all. I would like to have more time to ask questions and to interact with these two eminent speakers. And I'll talk more about Prerna Desai when we'll invite her to speak. With this, I would like to request Dr. Vibha Ahuja to start her presentation and give the brief information about the GM soybean crop to this audience. So over to you, Dr. Vibha.
Thank you so much, sir. I will just share my slides, and then are the slides visible, sir?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir, for your kind introduction and inviting me to speak to your members. A very good afternoon to all the participants, members of the CLAFMA, and very important sector, the livestock sector, and particularly including this topic, which is so important and needs to be, everybody needs to be aware of it for regarding the future opportunities. So I will have a very short presentation, about 20 minutes, and then we will have more questions and whatever concerns you all have, as advised by Neeraj ji. I'm going to talk to you about the use of genetically modified crops and derivatives for animal feed. What is the status and what are the opportunities that are there, and these can be effectively used by our livestock sector. So very briefly about our company, Biotech Consortium India Limited. We are a company promoted by the Department of Biotechnology, Government of India, and the All India Financial Institutions. We work in the area of biotechnology commercialization. The successful use of the biotechnology is developed in the institutions. And one of the very important area is the biosafety issues in the genetically modified crops. And this is where I specialize in, and we would be talking a little more about it. Sir has already mentioned that we have been already involved in the biosafety issues to genetically modified organisms in various activities, not only in India, but overall in the South Asia. So the way I'm going to discuss with you is, we would first like to know, since in the popular press, we get a lot of information about the genetically modified crops, sometimes right, sometimes wrong, but we will just have a quick look at what are these crops, what is the global and Indian status, what are the derivatives particularly that can be used as animal feed, and then a little about the concerns or the myths which are prevalent and the factual position. Just to take back to your minds to, we have crops which are there today. How are these crops which have been improved and the ones that we are using today? So if you look to your right, this picture, the maize, the wild maize looked like a very, very, not like the products which we use today. If you look at the below picture, the tomatoes are not like the ones which were there today. And how these have been improved is through trial and error selection by our ancestors for almost 9,900 years. Then we moved on to breeding on a more scientific basis for the past 100 years, and all these, varieties came up for use by all of us. Subsequently, then came about 30 years back a technology called molecular biology, through which we can actually produce plants and animals with specific gene insertions and the way we want, targeting these crops. Look at this cartoon, this picture here. You can see that what is genetically modified crop, in which we have altered the DNA, which means when we were doing breeding, our genetic makeup is like a strand of pearls, moti ki mala jaisa hai. And then if you see this, if this orange colored is the desired gene that I want to put, a gene calls for a trait. For example, if my eyes are blue, there's a gene for that. If my eyes are black, there's a different gene for that. So like that, every trait in any living organism, whether it is crop, animal, or bacteria, it is through genes. So, but when we were doing breeding, we used to take this, if I have to put this trait, then there'll be many other traits which will go with that. And then, it will take me many years to get a new variety so that the trait of interest is there. But if I take a GM crop, I can just cut this gene and put it in another new crop, and we will have a genetically crop with a new trait which is of interest to you. This looks very nice, but what is unique in this? A genetically modified crop carries new gene, and this new gene, earlier we were doing breeding was with the close relatives, soybean with soybean, or wheat with wheat, different varieties of wheat. But through molecular biology, we can take genes from many other organisms like bacteria, virus, fungi, and we can break this barrier. And this is a very big breakthrough and can help us solve several problems. So what are the examples? This looks like very high science, but it is not. And very simple, simple interventions have been made to make what we call blockbuster products. So here, if I say there is something called, all our crops, they are affected by insects, and that is why we get low yields. Just now, prior to your meeting, there was a discussion that even the cotton this year is a problem, So why it is a problem? Because in cotton, we have a very, an insect, a pink bollworm, which is really affecting the cotton crop. So like that, there are various diseases, various insects, which affect the crops. And then one GM crop, which is very popular around the world, is what we call insect resistant GM crops. How we could produce that? There is a bacteria called Bacillus thuringiensis, which produces a protein which is toxic to this particular pest. So when a GM crop, I have taken a gene for that, put it in this crop, in corn, cotton, brinjal, so many crops this has been put. And finally, we get a crop which is resistant to this particular insect. So these are all healthy crops, and healthy crop means we get more yield, which is required for our use in the user sectors like our animal feed or human food and so on and so forth. The second important thing is herbicide tolerance. When we grow the crops, there are a lot of weeds, These herbicides are used to kill these weeds, but they also kill the plants. Now we have made, through genetic intervention, what we call herbicide tolerant crop, which means when we spray the herbicide, this our plant will not be affected, but all the weeds will die. And this, here comes your soybean. A herbicide tolerant soybean is successfully used around the world. Even in the corn and cotton, this trait has been added. Then there are things like GM papaya, where there is a viral gene which has been added, and you get this kind of papaya you have seen in the market, in which there are white spots, and this is a virus infection, but we have added a gene from the virus, and then that has been the one which you get. The GM papaya is like a healthy papaya with no infection. Just to remind you that even the vaccines and the insulin or all these hormones that we are using, they are also produced through genetically modified crops. With the successful use of this, there are so many crops which have been globally, modified with the GM crops: rice, tomato, sugarcane, beans, and so on. And there are several traits with which globally the crops are commercially cultivated. Now, these crops are very good, and that is why they were modified, like from in 1996, the first crop came, 1.7 million hectares, and continuously there has been a very much increase in the area under cultivation, and the 4 major crops, which are commodity crops, are being used and cultivated around the world. These are soybeans. You can see almost 50% of 190 area is the soybean. Then maize is the second one, and cotton and canola. Then there are other crops which are coming up in the past few years, like potatoes, apples, and brinjal, and so on. If you look at the global scenario, this is an old picture. These are all the countries which grow any one GM crop. In India, is also dark green because we grow cotton here. Whereas there are several other countries who are simply importing and using. So there are almost, this figure is a little old, I couldn't get a new map, but then there are almost 71 countries, and much of the Africa also is now started growing and using these crops. So you can see that, I'm just going to correlate to this, that if you start scouting for non-GM crops, it is going to be very difficult in certain particular crops. So top 10 countries which are in which have approved for food, feed, and cultivation. You can see the names here: US, Japan, Canada, Brazil. So virtually most of the countries which are developed, they are consuming these GM crops, and they are happily using it for their food and feed uses. There are some who are not cultivating but only using, like South Korea, Japan. They mostly import these crops because they don't grow them. Now here, as I said, the 5 topmost countries, of course, are the US, Brazil, Argentina, and most of this is the corn and the soybean. India is there, but India is growing only the BT cotton. So if I look at the scenario in India there is only one GM crop which has been approved, which is the BT cotton, and this was approved in 2002. You see, in few years of the approval, it had high adoption rates. Almost 95% area is under BT cotton cultivation, and it helped us triple the cotton production. We became exporter from importer. We started exporting cotton instead of, earlier we were importing for our new needs. It reduced the insecticide sprays, and subsequently, along with that, there was an increased production of cotton seed and its byproducts, oil and meal, which increased significantly, as you can see, almost 3 times, 0.46 million tons in 2002, and it increased to 1.5 million tons in 2014-15. Coming to the use of the GM crop ingredients for the livestock feed, the area that you all belong to, these are the 5 or 6 important crops, which important products which are extensively used globally. These include soybean meal, canola meal, cottonseed meal, corn gluten meal or feed, and dried distillers grain soluble, which is DDGS, a derived product. Now, none of these products actually contain any living modified organism, in the sense that it is not in the living form, and are considered non-LMOs as per the international agreements, and therefore are exempted from any biosafety regulations in most countries. GM soybean meal is as I mentioned to you, the top GM crop which is grown in the world is soybean. It's a byproduct of the soybean oil and used in food and animal feeds. It is said that almost 98% of the meal used globally is actually the GM soybean meal. Dried distillers grain solubles, it's a byproduct of GM corn, and it is grown in, after the distillation. Of course, we have the corn gluten meal also, and this is also imported by several countries and being used successfully as the animal feed, cheaply available source. Cottonseed meal, of course, livestock sector in our country also is using it. All the countries which import the cottonseed meal from India, they treat it as non-LMO and do not subject it to any regulations. If I look at the global trends, even here, like in US, most of the 95% of the animals used for meat and dairy eat GM crops. It is used using the GM soya and the GM corn used in the US itself. Whether it is UK, Australia, even European Union, the most of those countries are using these products for animal feed. In India, cottonseed meal is extensively used in animals. There are very, very small quantities which have been exported. But soybean meal was, of course, recently permitted with the efforts of all of you. to check the prices and also to make it available. And then applications for canola meal and DDGS are still with the regulators for approval with the government. Now, all this looks very nice, but where is the problem? The problem is that there has been a lot of misinformation, or I would say a lot of doubts created by some activist organizations and by some, system within the system. And therefore, the GM crops became like a subject of debate. And this debate is not only in India, but even some other countries, but there the governments have successfully taken the decisions. So if I look at this maize, somebody says they will cause biodiversity loss, somebody says it is benefits, somebody says we need segregation, we need non-GM and GM separate, and which is going to be very expensive. Then food safety issues, labeling issues, monopolization by the translational, and so on. This kind of lot of issues are, floating around. Why there are biosafety concerns? As I mentioned to you, that the GM crop contains genes from not just the same species, but from the other species. So when this technology came in 1972 actually, around that time, there were definitely concerns, but addressing those concerns, systems have been put in place and the scientific methodologies are there. The first GM crop was insulin, and subsequently the first crop was tomato actually, but subsequently applications in healthcare have been widely accepted, but there is definitely a lot of debate still in the minds of people, some concerns regarding the use of GM crops in agriculture. In healthcare, I would tell you that in India itself, almost 100 different medicines, they are approved, which are derived from genetically modified organisms. Even the corona vaccine, Covishield, that we have all taken a shot, that is derived from a genetically modified organisms. So the issues there include food safety and environmental related issues. Food safety, people thought that since these genes are coming from various organisms, there might be a risk of introducing toxins, allergens, and there could be potential damage. Then there are non-scientific issues, which are, of course, you all as traders are better aware of: monopolization or by the MNCs, increase in the prices, farmers will be affected, regulations are there, and so on. Now, when it comes to addressing the scientific concerns, I would like to assure you all that there are not only the international methodologies like by organizations like OECD, Codex, very, very well established procedures. There is a full-fledged biosafety system here, which you can see on your right side. Committees under the Ministry of Environment, Department of Biotechnology, and so on. Experts look at the data and then they approve the product. But the non-scientific, of course, cannot be dealt because they are based on apprehensions, and some of those issues are not unique to GM crops, but applicable to, general agriculture. So the impact of this polarized debate has been that there are delay in the approval of GM crops. You all had to struggle so much for GM soybean, whereas it is grown in almost 80% of the cultivation around the world is the GM crops. So why can't we have it in India also? But despite the highly successful experience, there has been no further approvals. BT brinjal was there, moratorium, GM mustard is on hold, despite the urgent need to increase the productivity. And all this has resulted also on the illegal cultivation. And the number of trials have significantly reduced, research has been reduced, and this has been a slightly negative effect in our country. And the effect of the same is that there is a stagnation in production and increase in the prices, which you all are suffering from. Now, if you look at this soybean, graph on your right, here you can see that, where is India? India is the last graph. So wherever productivity is so low, and that's why we are always struggling about, we are not applying the innovative technologies, which is the need. And, another thing is the countries which have, used these new technologies, there the prices are much lower also, and because of the better productivity. Same is the situation with rapeseed. Here you can see the import of vegetable oils. It is increasing like anything, and we are seeing a high price rise. I will quickly take you through some of the concerns that we have heard. The GM crops and foods are not safe, you will hear from some people, which is not true. No general statement can be made. Case by case assessment is done. I have written here that very, very established academies of sciences, World Health Organization, FAO, they have all given statements that the genetically modified crops are safe, but every crop has to be assessed, on a case by case basis. Another myth which is around is that if we take the GM crops, feed it to our animals, this may come in meat, milk, eggs, and so on, but this is not true. Genes are part of all living organisms. When you eat your food, you actually eat genes, a lot of genes and a lot of proteins. Gene is nothing but a chemical, a DNA, and humans and animals, we all eat genes whenever we eat any kind of food. These are novel genes in that particular crop, but they're existing in nature. They've been taken from nature and have been safely tested. There is not going to be any presence of these transgenes in the food products because they will get digested. There is another myth which has been floating around is that there might be antibiotic resistance introduced in GM through these GM crops, which is also incorrect. Numerous scientific studies have concluded that the likelihood of any antibiotic resistance gene from crops to any other organism is virtually zero. Food with GM crops contains fewer nutrients. This is not as nutritious as the non-GM. That is also a myth. Actually, prior to approval, detailed compositional analysis of every crop is done, and that clearly indicates that the crop is as nutritious as from the traditional plant. In fact, there is a better nutritionally enhanced crops are being developed now, which include one of the biofortified maize, high lysine maize, even for specifically for use in the for the animal feed in the United States. Long-term effects is another issue, but there also, as I said, safety is very well established, and the difference between the two is the inserted gene and the protein, which are very, very elaborately tested. Some people keep saying that, okay, this is an insect resistant crop. How does it increase the yield? I was in a meeting at SOPA, they were asking, please give us a guarantee that it will increase, yield increase will be there. You see, how does the yield increase happen? Yield increase happens when you deal with the problems, insect resistance, disease resistance, herbicide tolerant, drought tolerance, when the rains don't come, the crop should survive. All those, when you deal with all these problems, yields automatically increase, and we have seen a continuous increase in the adoption of GM crops wherever they have been adopted. Even in our own country, when the BT cotton was, approved and cultivated, widely adopted, we saw almost tripling of our production. So what is the way forward, which is for all of you? This is all little bit of science and little bit of the status. But here I would like to just conclude by saying that GM crops are commercially cultivated and traded across the world. You have seen 71 different countries have, approved since last year. In fact, the figure may be a little more because we have still not have the 2020 data because of the pandemic. Area has increased significantly, 90 million hectares. Large number of countries are importing these products for food, feed, and processing. Systematic regulations we have in our country to ensure the safe use of GM crops, and also in other countries, scientific methodologies. There is a need to increase the research efforts and field testing, and most importantly, urgent need for streamlining the approval procedures. We must consider all processed products as non-LMOs, as was done in the case of GM soybean meal. And this approval should be extended to all the products, so that as and when there is a need, such products can be made available to the industry for use, thereby increasing actually the livestock production, and which can help increase the revenues. Thank you so much. This is a quick glimpse of this sector, and I hope I am within time, and would be happy to take questions.
So thank you, Dr. Vibha. I think this was an amazing presentation by you, clarifying most of the doubts about the GM crops for the country, and at least you have taken almost some of those myths and what people perceive and thinks, and you have done that. So there is a lot of takeaway messages. I could see that one thing was that top 10 developed countries of the world, they are growing the GM crop. Okay, so there should not be any questions and doubt on that. We have in India also a success story of the GM cotton, and which has made us a net exporter from being an importer, and which yield and production has gone 3 times up. I think if such revolutions happens in the soybean in the country, the need for the poultry industry is not going to be a challenge anywhere in the future. Okay. Thank you so much. I think we'll take up the questions at the end. Okay. So I can see some of the hands which has been raised. So I'm not sure that can we take these questions, Dr. Vibha, right now, or would you like to answer this at the end of the both presentation?
Sir, as you feel, sir, I am available till the end, so maybe we can have another presentation or whenever you feel.
Yeah, so we can take the questions at the end. Okay. Now I request Ms. Prerna Desai, okay, to just talk on the current situation of the soybean meal in the country. I'm personally excited to listen her, hear her, and see the data, what current soybean is saying for the country. We are listening a lot of speculations. We feel every day some upper circuit in the trading. Traders are increasing the prices, and that also product is not available. So what exactly is happening in the soybean meal? What is going on? I think we are going to get a lot of answers from the presentation of Ms. Prerna Desai. Ms. Prerna is the head of research, Samunnati Agro. She has a vast experience of commodity research of more than 25 years, which she doesn't look like. She specializes in agri-commodity research. As a part of her vast experience, she has done commodity research for various value chain participants like manufacturers, traders, exchange, commodity brokers, NBFC, and now she is doing it for farmers. Samunnati Agri Enterprises consist of all those business entities offering products as well as services pertaining to inputs, production, transportation, processing, and marketing in agriculture, as well as allied sectors such as animal husbandry, fisheries, poultry, forestry, and so on. Samunnati Agri offers solutions to cater to the needs of value chain operating in the agricultural space, and they follow aggregation, market linkage, as well as advisory services approach. Samunnati facilitates market access through financials and non-financial solutions that enable the enterprises and associated value chains to operate at a higher equilibrium, thereby creating value for all the stakeholders. And there are advisory services that is also available for consultation at a fee. I think we already heard her in the CLAPMA AGM. We are circulating along with our CLAPMA daily commodity updates, some of the research of her group. And today we are going to listen her live. I'll request each one of you to listen her very patiently. Keep your doubts ready, questions ready, and at the end of her presentation, we can go through and we'll try to answer that. So welcome, Ms. Prerna. Now floor is yours.
Thank you, Neeraj, for this very generous introduction, and also inviting me once again to your forum to discuss the feed ingredient situation. Last time I remember I had presented on grain, maize. Today we'll be talking about soya bean, and I'll be talking with relatively higher confidence on it because we've done our crop survey of all the major states, and I'll be sharing with you the findings and other learnings. I'm not from the feed industry, so you can, I can say that I am an outsider having a more neutral view on the commodity and the trend, and I will of course be adding my experience to it. Just in briefly, I would like to answer the question that Neeraj has raised, that why the rally in soya bean. So I want to say that over a period of 25 years and after tracking multiple commodities, I do know that whenever there are tight demand and supply scenario in previous season, the first quarter always sees a harvest time of rally. That is because the pipelines are empty, the buyers are more, the sellers have seen the, very high prices and they expect to get that same benefit. So to that extent, the rally that soybean has seen is kind of, more like a textbook rally that a tight year, has after the previous tight year and followed by a good crop year that has. We, of course, later on, it was this, the whole scenario was kind of impacted by the imports of meal, and it so happened that the imports were in very limited hands. So that kind of created a very tight pipeline, very empty pipeline for meal also, especially for your industry, and I'm sure you felt it too. So on one hand, the farmers' resistance to sell at the lower prices, and lack of free flow of the imported soya meal that has already reached to on Indian soil, but it's not really available at a price discovery that can help price come lower. And third, there are those people who know that there is always this kind of empty pipeline, and that results in spike in prices at the time of harvest, that they have stocked up the goods, and all of this together resulted in very sharp rally in soybean just at the time of harvest. Now I will be sharing my presentation, which I had prepared. Actually, this was to be presented last week only, but I think this event was scheduled for 1 week after, and so some of the data you might find that are 1 week delayed. Just give me a minute to share my screen. So I'm just hoping that you are able to see my screen. I will be talking about the soybean scenario, and based on the crop survey that we have done. Before that, just briefly about the company. Samunnati is India's largest agri-tech enterprise, and the focus is smallholder farmer, and the whole system is created around the smallholder farmer. The strategy is aggregation, market linkages, and advisory services, what we call AMLA strategy. And these are some of the statistics that, since the Samunnati came in existence 6 years back, some very great market farmer database that we have created, and farmers linkages we have created, a lot of FPOs we are working with. Samagra is the agriculture research services that I belong to, and it is also available at fee for those who want to subscribe to it. This year, we, as everybody knows, that there were a lot of rains that happened till late October. There were rains, so the whole crop was also delayed, and hence the crop survey was also delayed. But we tried and covered most of the soybean growing regions. The crop survey was done during 6th October to 19th October. There were so many farmers were visited in each state, so many FPOs. And I would like to, kind of tell you that because of this FPO network, we've also started staying in touch with the farmers, getting to know what are the anticipation, what are the expectation, how is health of the crop, etc. As you all know that, the monsoon was very erratic this time, and we did have some very heavy rains in September and October. While this was anticipated by most of the weather forecasting agencies, including IMD, who had said that we'll have late rains. So from the very beginning, we were kind of, preparing for a scenario that had a excess rains toward the end of the season, and it kind of materialized just like as it was forecasted. Though it's an exception, but that is how it worked out. We have, this is the second year in a row we are having a record acreage under soybean, but the yields have been very fluctuating, and that's why the production has kind of stagnated. The acreage was 1% higher on a anyway a record acreage, and Gujarat has been, increasing acreage under soybean, and we saw that there is a high, almost 50% increase in the soybean acreage in Gujarat. The productivity is expected to rise by 15%, and that is why we see that the crop is higher year on year. This is what our understanding on area production and yield of soybean for 21 and 22 season. Madhya Pradesh, as you can see, has seen the best yield. There's a lot of jump. Also because last year's base was much lower. The total yields are up by 15%. The production is expected to be up by 16% at around 110 lakh tons. The productivity has declined in Rajasthan, Karnataka, and Telangana because of the heavy rains. As everybody knows, the arrivals have been very erratic, though it kind of jumped to almost 10 lakh bags per day. But then there was a lot of farmer resistance, and the arrivals kind of collapsed, and that kind of squeezed the market. And like I said, that these data are till last week, because the presentation was to be at that time. Generally, we do see consistent arrivals of 10 to 11 lakh bags per day during the peak harvest time, especially when the crop is as good as 100 lakh tons. So arrivals, as everybody knows, are slow, and that has kind of created a short squeeze kind of a situation. I am presenting here the balance sheet that is in front of me that we have created. Yeah. So as everybody know, the opening stocks are were very tight for 21-22. The availability 16% higher. Imports are expected to be lower because of very high production. And the supply as a result is lower by 5%, despite the fact that we are having a 16% higher production. This is mainly because of the low carry forward stock from the previous season, that the total supply is down. Bean export, as you know, have been happening, and so there is slight improvement there. The crush is expected to be lower. That's because the total supply is lower. And, because we have meal imports this time, so around 8 lakh ton of meal import is what being assumed. And that is also impacting the crush number over here. And I would like to draw your attention to this carry forward number, that, 12 lakh ton of carry forward is substantially, though not record, because historically we have seen more than 2 million ton of carry forward also. So to that extent, 12 lakh ton may not seem very high, but it is definitely higher year on year. And this number will of course change as and when the meal scenario changes. So I will definitely share with you the meal scenario also, in which we believe that, soya meal exports should happen because of the global scenario. Everybody knows that globally soybean complex, oilseed complex, because of the weather disruptions, the supplies have not improved to the extent that one would like it to be. Argentina and Brazil have gone in for sowing, but we are not very sure how the weather will play and whether the production would revive or not. And like I shared with you in the Indian scenario also, that the year when there is a tight balance sheet, the following year does not necessarily go into, from absolutely tight year to absolutely loose year. There's always that transition, and in between we find that the prices have a tendency to go up, where short-term shortages are created, pipelines are empty, and that kind of creates a short squeeze. What I wanted to point out is that this year also we expect exports to materialize to around 10 lakh tons. This is because, as you know, that globally the freight chaos is there. The freight rates are very high, and there's a lot of uncertainty into the movement of agricultural goods globally. So that is why we believe that in and around India, especially the nearby countries, there is always an opportunity, because of the geographical proximity, and that may materialize in exports of close to 10 lakh tons. We have to see that because Indian scenario in Q1 has kind of dramatically reversed, and the prices, the export parity has been completely lost. And so while there are this non-GM exports happening to Europe, but we'll have to see if this 10 lakh ton materializes or not. Why I'm pointing out is that if that 10 lakh ton does not really materialize, then we'll see that this particular 12 lakh ton of carry forward will go up further, because the lesser the exports, the more carry forward stocks we will see in soya bean, because lower exports will not materialize into higher crush. But oil is definitely an angle. In recent years, we've seen very high oil prices and bean being crushed for oil. So in any case, it works out good for the sector because it will allow the meal prices to fall more. So I just wanted to share with you that, the export number is what we'll need to kind of closely watch out for. The domestic consumption, we've assumed that it will bounce back to close to 63 lakh tons. Now I know that there have been a lot of debate into what is the exact consumption of soybean meal. And we are separately carrying out an exercise to find out, sector specific consumption demand of soybean meal. In fact, all feed ingredients. I myself am very curious since I attended your CLAFMA AGM. Following 15 days, immediately I had attended an address SOFA event also. And one thing I came to know is that there is no clarity on what is exact feed demand of all the feed ingredients in India. So just out of personal curiosity, I am getting into the research of finding that out. This is, of course, soya oil balance sheet. Like I said, that because the oil, the crush will be lower, meal imports have happened. That's why India will go into higher soya oil imports, and we will see a larger amount of soybean oil being imported. Like I said, that soybean prices are very high. This is the Q1. It starts from October to September. And as you can see, of course, the prices have jumped to around here now. But that's record for any time of the season, Q1. And so higher prices, my experience tells that anytime the season first quarter begins with higher prices, the higher prices don't sustain, and you see correction happening later in the season. And I do believe very strongly that we'll see a repeat of this. Now, our communication with farmers believe that they deserve prices of 7,000, and that is why they were holding the soya bean. And now at higher prices, we should see soya bean supply improve because the production is much higher. Also, as we move forward into the season, we will see mustard seed scenario becoming more clearer. As of now, so Samagra has done its sowing intention survey, and we believe that mustard crop is expected to be 18 to 20% higher, and that will be another record crop for mustard. And that itself will be very negative for soybean prices. As you know, I'm not sure whether you know or not, but 2 days back, government has also announced the extension of their food grain policy till March 2022. So that effectively will bring down the prices of wheat and bring down the prices of DORB because the availability will be plenty. And while that will also result in a lot of exports, but I do believe that going forward, the feed ingredient prices, overall supply will increase, improve, and bring down the prices. These are some of the photographs of the crop survey that we had done. And these are my, anybody wants to get in touch with me or ask things. And of course, I'm open to questions. I'm done with my presentation here. And that's it from my side. I thank you all for giving me the opportunity to speak. Neeraj.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Prerna. I think again, very interesting, mesmerizing presentation, lot of data. Okay, and I'm sure that people will be having some of those questions in their mind. What I had, because I was just talking to someone in some of the group. So let me start first asking this question to you, and then we can open the floor for team to ask. So I could see that you said our acreages has gone 1% up, whereas you are projecting the yield is almost 15% up. Okay, so can you just elaborate, because people are really some of the people, they asked me when I was just talking to them, and I wasn't able to actually clarify them that what are the reasons why this has happened. So I think you are the right person to.
So what I want to tell you is that the yield jump is 16% higher. That is because of the lower base last year. Last year, if you remember, the rains had happened in the month of October, and the damage was much more than the kind of disruption that we have seen in yields this year. So we could have had much higher crop had the late rains had not happened, and some kind of damage in some of the pockets like Rajasthan, Karnataka that I shared with you. So the jump, the delta, is largely because of the lower base than an absolute in absolute term itself. So because of the record acreage, the potential of higher crop was much bigger, but that was curtailed because of the weather disruption.
That's clear. We were not anticipating that factor. Okay, when we were. So I could see in the chat box there are a couple of questions. So yeah, this Dr. Devinder. So Subodh, you can unmute him. Let him ask the question. Yeah.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks, Prerna, for such a nice presentation. I have just some quick observations. I'd like to come on that. One is that when you're saying the productivity is going up pan-India by 16%, one of the factor is you're saying MP productivity is gone up by 31%, which is very, very difficult, I believe. Means whatever the crop may be in such a big state, overall assumption that on an average, every farmer got 31% higher yield, which is very difficult, which I can understand on that. Okay. Second point, which is coming it out is, in one of the slides, you are saying that as compared to last year, this year, soybean crushing will be lesser in India. And in the next slide to that, you also have stated that you are expecting double the amount of soybean meal import this year. Of course, that import is a highly policy driven. So expecting that to happen is again, I think is a big question mark. So these are the three assumptions which actually I'm not able to understand. Please, over to you.
Yeah, sure. So what I'll do is I'll share my screen again with you to explain to you what exactly is the yield scenario. If you see this is your Madhya Pradesh. I hope you are able to see it, right? Yeah. And here we've seen higher jump in 31%. But if you see the previous 2 years, historically, we've seen much higher yields, and in that context, if you see this particular yield is not great. I mean, it's not record for sure. We've seen much higher yields historically speaking. So the 31% jump is because of this low yield, which was actually lowest in many years. So in last one decade, this is second lowest yield ever that we saw in the year 2021. So like I also mentioned it to Srivastav ji, that it is the jump, it's the delta that is looking dramatic. But in historical context, you will see that it is not a very dramatic yield as such. Yeah, the other question was regarding, you said that imports, you think that imports are assumed by me are very high. So in fact, in this balance sheet, I'm just noticing that imports are actually taken very conservatively, which is 4 lakh ton. But we know for sure that around 8 lakh ton of meal imports are anyway happening. That's another thing. And the lower crush is largely because if you have 6 to 8 lakh ton of meal ready for consumption, the crush parity will only not come for the crushers to crush their meal. So that is what we've seen in Q1 also, that the bean prices rallied so much that there were times that there was no crush parity for them. And so that is why, and lower meal demand, we never carry meal as a carry out. The ending stocks will never be in the meal form, they'll be in the bean form. And that is why we believe that because of the higher meal imports, the consumption is rising. As you see that the meal consumption is not going down, it's the crush that is going down because of the 6 to 8 lakh tons of meal that we are importing. I hope I have answered all questions.
So Dr. Devender is muted again, so I'm not sure whether he will be. So we can take the second question. So I could see on
No,
the chat.
just one thing. Sorry to again interrupt. Prerna, if that is the case, we could predict a 31% jump in productivity this year. I agree. But how it's possible that the whole industry and all predictors could not predict last year 25% less production in that case?
I mean, honestly speaking, last year was the COVID year. I mean, the people who usually go out in field and do crop survey, like I myself could not conduct the crop survey, which I would, otherwise go talk to farmers, see it on ground. So what I am assuming is that last time, while associations have their own interest in giving out numbers, I would like to say that. But there were people like us who were neutral. We were not part of any association, be it a producer or a consumer. But we also could not do crop survey because of the COVID situation. And that is why things went into that nobody could really know how bad the crop situation was. The other thing was that last year, the fiasco also happened because we ended up exporting very large amount of meal in the first half. Because there was no clarity on the total production thing, and the exports went out so aggressively in the first half that second half we were actually left empty-handed. Yeah, I'm done.
Okay, I think thanks, Prerna. Very nicely explained. So we can take a question from Rakshit. He was raising hand. So Subodh, you can unmute Rakshit.
Hello.
Yeah, you can speak.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, sir. My question is to Dr. Ahuja, madam.
Yeah, please ask.
Ma'am, we have been seeing a large hue and cry from farmer community for these GM crops. So apart from cotton, we have not been seeing any progress in other crops. Why it is so? And I have one more comment on that. For GM crops, farmer community is being protesting like they lose their basic sovereign right for retaining the seeds if they use GM crops.
Yes. So, I'll answer your second question first. See, genetic, that's why I explained a little bit of science to all of you, that genetic modification is just to insert a new character. So, this has happened because of, again, in cotton, the varieties which are used are hybrids. So hybrids are the ones which have to be purchased every year by the farmer, whether it is GM or non-GM.
Non-GM, yes,
So
yes.
genetic modification does not make it compulsory to buy every year. Suppose we have tomorrow GM soybean, and it is put in the varieties, then a GM soybean will also, they can retain the seed. So if you put the gene in the variety, you are selling the variety, you don't have to buy, you can save some part of it. Although in reality, in practice, in many crops, even the varieties people go and purchase because of the better, quality and the purity of the seed. But genetic modification has nothing to do with whether you have to buy the seed every year or whether you can save the variety. It will be in the same way as it is done for the conventional crop. So again, as I said, this is a meeting where we are trying to address the myths. This is a myth, a misinformation to the farmers. If you are growing cotton varieties, then you don't need to, the way you behave the cotton variety for growing, like you don't have to buy, then you don't have to buy the GM version also. The only thing is, the only experience that we have in our country is the cotton. And in cotton, all 95% or almost 100% of the, 98%, I think, are hybrids which are grown. And hybrids have to be purchased every year.
Purchased again, yes.
Yes, that is what I wanted to say. And this is what you said, no? And the first question that you had is why we didn't have any other crop after BT cotton. It is again because
Success,
of, as I said, polarized debate, myths, and so on. And because of this polarized debate, the government has not taken decisions. There has been delay in decisions, and subsequently this has resulted in slowing down of the research, introducing new products, and so on.
Okay, ma'am. No, I mean, now being soybean, I mean, there is a less human consumption. It's being largely used in poultry production only, for poultry feed making. So can we, a body like CLAFMA can take aggressive step and push forward for the GM production in India, the soya GM?
Definitely, we should take, because you see, when it will be really great that we are all, we are able to have self-sufficiency in our country. But whenever, as I showed you the scenario, almost 80% of soybean around the world is GM soybean. So if you have to import, you have to have the GM, all the oil that we are getting, so much of soybean oil being imported in the country is derived from the genetically modified soybean. Similarly, now when you all went for meal, you needed the meal, there was no alternative but to go for the GM soybean meal. So why not in our country? We should grow GM soybean in our country, get the productivity increase. See, and also I would like to add here that maybe one technology will help add certain value to the production, but we should address our local problems. There should be intensive research and new varieties developed in our country also, so that we don't have to go out.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Yeah.
So I have received one question for Ms. Prerna. So the question says that you have projected that less crushing this financial year. Okay. So is that going to impact on the availability of the meal and the price? How do you see the forecast of soybean meal going forward in this financial year?
So the lower crush is largely because of the meal imports, which have already kind of are in the system. So I don't think that will impact the meal availability. Another thing that I have assumed is soybean meal exports. Now, say if Indian prices remain this high and if global prices do not rebound as I'm expecting, then that export will also not happen, and that will actually add to the overhang of the seed, and that will put pressure on soybean and soya meal prices. Now, there is only one disclaimer over here, is that historically we have seen that Indian industry chooses not to crush and carry the soybean as an inventory. Despite the fact that we are net importers of oil and we have such a large consuming and thriving sector. So that is one disclaimer. But I think that we will not have a problem as far as availability is concerned. And I do expect prices to soften as we get closer to Rabi harvest. I mean, there will be visibility of the mustard, large, humongous crop of mustard. And that will kind of, put pressure on all feed ingredients.
Okay, that's good. So we have got the hands raised by Dr. Sivaji Day. So Subodh, can you just unmute Dr. Sivaji? It's not unmuted. Subodh, can you just unmute Dr. Sivaji Day?
Yes, sir. Doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you hear me, Prerna ma'am?
Yes, doctor.
Yes. Ma'am, I have a question for you. You said the farmers are expecting a price of the seed around 7,000. And so farmers are holding it back, or maybe the farmers or the holders are holding it back. And at the same time, the plants will definitely not crush due to disparity. So in that case, and on the other hand, we would be forced to allow the import of GM meal. So definitely our usage, the soybean meal prices will soften. But what happens to the seed which are being hoarded by the farmers? If it is not used by the crusher due to disparity, and we have historically seen we don't carry forward this seed to the next year, and neither we hold it as an inventory due to the lack of fund. So what happens to the seed in that case? Won't it soften down and there will be a check and balance in the industry?
No, so you are slightly mistaken in believing that we don't carry soybean inventory. In fact, if you see last 6 to 7 to 8 years trend, I just mentioned that we have in couple of years we've ended up carrying soybean inventory of 20 lakh ton or more. So
that is by the farmer.
Sure.
That is by the farmers.
Not necessarily. It is the inventory in the system. Who's holding is a question, but usually farmers don't hold for that long, you know.
But soya crushers also don't hold, man.
So the
Soybean
stock
plants
is
do not
holded.
hold.
So the system holds, you know. I mean, whoever finds that the prices they will make money by holding soybean, they end up holding. They end up losing money also. I mean, it's for any commodity. Same holds true for soybean also. What I wanted to draw your attention to the fact that it is not right that we don't carry forward soybean inventories. That was true 8 to 10 years before. But last 6-7 years balance sheet, and if you remember, if you go back, we do carry large inventories of soybean. Another thing was that farmers, we do believe that farmers were expecting higher prices. They started with expecting 6,000 prices when actually soybean fell to around 5,000, very close to 5,000. Inferior mandis, it fell for a couple of days below 5,000 also. But as the prices started rising, they wanted more. And that is why the next target of 7,000 had emerged. And I do believe that close to current prices, the selling will start. Another thing that I wanted to point out is that if you see globally, the third variant of COVID has now emerged, and that has kind of, you know, resulted in sell-off in all asset classes. So your crude has fallen by 11% overnight. All agriculture commodities have taken a lot of beating. Dollar index is now approaching 97. All of this is creating a sort of black swan kind of an event that we have seen in last 10 years appearing, you know, often, like, you know, the global financial meltdown kind of a situation. So that also will put pressure on commodities, and we should see commodity prices coming down, at least in very near term of 1 month, 1 or 2 months sort of a thing.
So my next question is, what's the MSP of the soybean seed this year?
So I think soybean MSP is 51 something.
So future projection, will it come below MSP or we need to wait?
I doubt that it will come below. So sorry, soybean MSP is 39.50.
Yeah, exactly.
And no, I mean, like, you know, if we collapse much faster than the global markets, then we'll end up exporting. which is what my base case scenario is, that like, at CLAFMA event also, if you remember, I had said that close to 5,000 to 5,100, the export parity sets in. And that kind of, ends up exporting the supporting the soybean prices. So I do not honestly feel that that 5,200 or price that we had seen should very much serve as the bottom for the season.
All right.
Unless,
So
of
if
course,
it,
global scenario changes dramatically.
okay. So we should just keep a mark on around 5,000-ish. So that
Yeah.
we
I
keep
think what
buying.
the
Okay.
best way would be to stay hand to mouth at higher prices. Do not panic and
Absolutely.
believe that prices has no limit and it will continue to rise as it happened last year. Last year was a different year.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yeah, so I think, Prerna, this is one of the golden words, what you said, that because the whole industry is panic. And I have been getting calls from the people that, sir, his prices are going to touch again 100 rupees. Shall we do some stocks or what we should do? So I think this clarity is going to really give a big relief to the industry players. Okay, so I have just received another question. And again, it was very straightforward that they're asking a lot of solutions and the things from you, that when do you think that prices are going to start going down or soften?
I do believe that 7,000 is on horizon for soybean, because farmers sell whatever they harvest, but once that is not sold, they've kind of stocked it, and once they've stocked it, there is no hurry to sell. I do remember one of my friend, he said, I was traveling and there was this farmer who carried 2 bags into auto rickshaw and he came for selling. He said, I'm not in a hurry to sell. I'll sell whatever is required for me. So there is this particular gap was also Rabi sowing activity was going in full fledged. And so, and there was expectation of higher prices. And I've been telling it to my team is also, and that is my conviction is also that when the Rabi humongous mustard crop will be visible for everybody, that will be visible in acreage as well as on field, and there'll definitely be pressure on prices. Usually, I was just looking at it yesterday, soybean meal prices peak in November, and after that they start falling quite sharply. So we are at the end of November, so I do believe that we are very close to the peak of prices.
Thank you so much. So I don't see any more questions in the chat box. So I think floor is open. If audience, anyone has any questions, you can ask it. There are people who have written that they have sent it by mails. So I think we can always try to get them back. I could see 2 chats by Mr. Krishna Reddy. So we'll try to upload this presentation on the CLAFMA website and people can view, all the members can view there. The second question was that FSSAI has called for public comments on the permitting inclusion of GM ingredients in foods. So what is the action taken by CLAFMA and CLAFMA members? I think if any such things is coming up, this is going to be again a good opportunity for us to project ourselves. I'll request Dr. Vibha to answer this, that what should be the CLAFMA motive and what should be CLAFMA stand on this, to reply to FSSAI.
Yes, sir. See, this is very right that Food Safety Authority has, put up on their website the new FSSAI regulation. I would also like to share with you a little history of this, that traditionally, as per our rules, it is the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change which has been regulating the genetically modified organisms, including the crops and healthcare products. But in case of the healthcare products, these products are also regulated by the Drug Controller General of India. So the pharmaceutical industry actually, worked very hard in about 2000, maybe 10, 15 years back, and there was a report and so on, and the pharmaceutical products were out of the out of the purview of the Ministry of Environment, and they are only taken care by the Drug Controller General of India. So now, similarly, the genetically modified foods, after the Food Safety Act came into place, the Food Safety Authority is expected to look at the GM foods and approve it, and not the Ministry of Environment. But then, Ministry of FSI did not have any regulations, and they have been working on it for several years. And finally, we have a draft which has been put up. It was put up on 15th November, and it is there for 60 days for comments. Now, as far as the CLAFMA is concerned, presently the food does not include the feed. The definition of food does not include the feed, and that is why there is a little bit of a confusion. But we understand that the definition of food is being modified to include the feed also. So that is why it's very important. I'm so happy that it has been raised. And I think CLAFMA should look at the regulations very carefully and see how it is going to impact them. And we can have a discussion, or have like a 1-by-1 clause, or you can have you can review these drafts, and wherever you need assistance, I will be available to provide you and clarify various things, and inform about how these will impact the use of all such projects for the livestock industry in particular. That is the use as animal feed. But very important, everybody should look at these regulations. And I think in the broad outlook should be like to keep this the way the pharmaceutical industry was able to get it out of the purview of the biosafety regulations. The the meal kind of products, the one which we saw, soya meal, canola meal, all these are highly processed, and whatever intervention we have made that has once been safely tested, it need not be into too much of regulation, and there should be flexibility in the market, so that they can be easily used. And all this price discussion where what we are seeing, this can be for the benefit of the livestock sector. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am. Thanks for offering your support. We'll definitely get back to you on that.
Sure.
So I think we'll try to answer the other questions of mail, reply to those respective people. If anyone has any questions, they can raise hand, they can ask if they have any doubt. Otherwise, we are very close to make our session ends. So we decided to keep it up to 3:30, and we are just 2 minutes left behind that. So I request my honorary secretary, Mr. Suresh Devara, to summarize and give his vote of thanks.
Thank you, Neeraj. Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Ahuja and Ms. Desai for sparing their valuable time and addressing our gathering of CLAFMA, this webinar, especially for the GM crop issue, soya crop, which is a very big issue going on in the current scenario. Dr. Ahuja has clearly mentioned about the differentiate and derivatives about in the presentation about the GM animal feed, how it is consumed worldwide, what are the percentage of countries, rather about 71 countries as per her, are growing and or consuming GM crop. So on what I could understand from her thing, and which I think our members would also have learned from, that there is the major resistance to get the GM crop in India is the myth which is related with it. There are many myths which are floating around, which are not allowing our government to take a final decision on it. And we at CLAFMA will definitely are trying our best to explain to the government, machinery and everyone in the department, the difference between the myths and the actual reality. As the last point, what madam said, it was our offer of supporting CLAFMA in preparing, going through the date, point to point on the FSSAI regulation, which has come up last week on the website. Thank you very much for that. And as far as Dr. Desai is there, this is our second interaction with our members after our AGM. The statistics which she has been sharing with us, we have been also, ma'am, sharing with our members over last 2 weeks. And I think our members are quite happy with your statistics. And finally, I would like to thank both of you and all the participants over here, my CLAFMA office team, my office bearers, members of CLAFMA, and our support staff and the webinar organizer, Mr. Mistry and group. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Sureshji. So thanks everyone, all the participants. Really very happy to see Dr. Shivaji Day and asking the question also. Okay, so they are the people who are legends of our industry. They know the industry. He has been actively involved in the solvent extraction as well as one of the largest poultry and aqua feed producer of the country. So my heartfelt thanks to Dr. Vibha Ahuja and Ms. Prerna. I think it was a fantastic presentation, crystal clear presentation from both of you. And I'm sure that the team is going to have a lot of take-home messages, enlightened. And from CLAFMA, we are going to get back to you, and we may be going to look forward your support to some bigger notes and the bigger forum. See you soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.